We will be having an interview later on with Peter Wakaba. But a personal finance advisory firm, the Interest Rates Advisory Center for Iraq, is warning that banks could be hoodwinking borrowers into paying higher than intended rate of interest loans under the new law. In an exclusive interview with KTN News, Iraq CEO Wilfred Onono points out that the bankers seem to be using the wrong reference to interpret the new law. He spoke to our business editor, Peter Wakaba, a short while ago.
Rending indeed fair interest rates in this country. At the forefront of that fight was the then GEM MP Joe Donde. That fight has continued to this day, and most recently was taken up by Kiambu MP Jude Njomo, who has indeed gone into the history books as the one person who has been able to create enough upswell to bring this into reality. The president has indeed signed the 2016 law that seeks to cap interest rates. And the question many Kenyans are asking, the deed has been done. How do we go forward to start implementing this law in a way that Kenyans will start to appreciate what the spirit of the bill itself is? Well, we have been able to get Mr. Wilfred Onono. He is the CEO of the Interest Rates Advisory Center. That is an organization that seeks to assist Kenyans to be able to tackle the issue of interest rates, be it the application of the Induplam rule, which for a very long time has been a problem for a lot of Kenyans. The fact that the law mandates that it is up to you to ensure that banks don't charge you exorbitant interest rates in terms of not paying up to double the amount that you borrowed. Mr. Onono, you are joining us from the town center. And the question on many Kenyans' minds today is, with the law now signed, what needs to happen such that we can start to see it being applied in law?
Hello?
Yes.
Are we live now?
Yes, we are. If you can hear me quite clearly.
I'm not hearing you very clearly, so maybe you'll speak a little louder.
Yeah, I will ask the question again.
Yes.
The bill has been signed, the deed has been done. With the president having signed this bill into law, what will be the first step so that Kenyans can then start to enjoy the fruits of, well, this law?
The first thing to do is to get the bill gazetted and clear guidelines issued to all banks on the implementation date. In the past, we've had a problem with, if you remember the banks went to court because there was a commencement date that was on the bill, or rather on the act, but the bill was signed into law 6-7 months later. So that brought issues. This particular one, I'm looking forward to having it gazetted with a very clear commencement date on the act.
There have been several fronts, indeed, of confusion for many Kenyans, and the first being the fact that a lot of organizations, a lot of media has been quoting the CBR rate, the central bank rate, as the point of reference for this law. But we have the KBRR, the Kenya Bankers Reference Rate, which should be a more accurate, level of judging what the base rate that is applicable for this rate is.
The KBRR rate, in my view, is the correct base rate to be used in computing interest, the interest rate. It is described by the central bank as a uniform base lending rate for all banks. This is the rate which all banks have been using to price their loans since the year 2014 when the central bank introduced the KBRR. The central bank rate has been around for some time, and that particular rate is the rate the central bank uses when it's lending to the banks, or vice versa. So it has nothing to do with bank-borrower relationship. The only rate that is being used in determining the rate of interest to be paid by borrowers from banks is the KBRR, and therefore, in the Act, reference to base rate, in my view, should be KBRR.
If we take the situation today, the fact that the rate is something about 8-9%, well, the rate then we should be quoting should be in the region of 12.9%, not the 14.5% that everyone has been talking about.
We should be talking about the KBRR rate of 8.9 today since July 2. 2016
Yes.
plus 4. Basically, what the law is saying is that instead of leaving the banks free to determine the premium they put on the base rate,
Yes.
the Act has now said that premium on base rate is a maximum of 4%. Yes, so from the date, the effective date when the Act is signed into, or rather, when the Act is gazetted, we should be talking of a maximum rate of 12.9 for the next 6 months.
Do you think this is a point of contention? Why would everyone just jump on the CBR rate? Do you think this might even be a front for going to court to determine what exactly the rate is as determined by the law?
I can't understand, but basically I think it's because it's the higher of the two.
Yes.
The CBR rate at the moment is 10.5. That gives them another 1.6 more.
The other question that is on a lot of Kenyans' minds is the fact that will this law apply retrospectively? Can it be applied to loans that were taken in the past? Does the law set out to say that all Kenyans can enjoy this benefit? Does that mean that if I took a loan a year ago, I should start to enjoy the benefits? And will I start to enjoy those today, or is the bank going to refund me money?
No, it should not be retrospective, but for all loans that are outstanding, whatever amount is outstanding today,
Yes.
should now attract interest at the new rate.
So we are going to draw a line and say the president signed this bill the day before yesterday, that is maybe the 23rd of August, the year 2016,
Yeah.
and then draw a line there and then recalculate the loans going forward at whatever prevailing rate, 12.9%, and be able to say that is the applicable rate of interest.
In my view, yes. Going forward, the applicable rate across all loans is a maximum of 12.9.
The question then that arises there is the fact that loans are calculated in a way that the monthly repayments will then mean that you have been paying off interest calculated and paying off the principal. Are we then going to determine what the new principal is and what the outstanding balance is, the outstanding interest is based on a new calculation?
All loans are normally priced on a variable rate.
Yes.
Which means if, for example, the reference rate goes up, the banks immediately increase your rate of interest irrespective of when you took your loan.
Yes.
Unless you are signed for a fixed rate interest facility, which is very rare. Or most loans are on what they call variable rate. And the variable means if the base goes up, your rate goes up. If the base goes down, or if your risk assessment goes the other way, then of course they will increase your interest rates. So interest rates are normally variable, and therefore, to me, this is a variation being introduced by statute. Yeah.
Banks have come out to say that through KBA, they have come out to say that they support the spirit of the law and that they will cooperate in trying to, of course, to implement it in a way that benefits all Kenyans. The last time this happened, they went to court to challenge the very letter of that law. Do you expect that that might happen again?
There are several gray areas in the way it's not very explicit. In fact, we have a problem with a lot of laws that they do not define the terms very, very clearly. And this leaves room for people to seek interpretation.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's what the banks will want to do. We saw it in 2001 during the Donde bill, where they went to court to question how they could be fined
Yes.
for offenses they committed before the bill was signed into law. So if there is any room for doubt or some vagueness in the act, I'm sure they will want to go to court for interpretation. But God forbid, we should really all benefit as quickly as possible.
Yes, in more developed economies, we've seen interest rates of as low as 2% and even less, with the central bank's rates of 0 point something percent. What is the sustainable way for Kenya to start to trend in that direction? Because even at the 12.9%, well, that is a fair rate today. It's still very high when you put it on a global scale. What needs to happen such that Kenyans can say that maybe in 5 to 10 years we can start to enjoy the benefits of really low interest rates?
I think it's a question of being fair to everybody in the country, because what has happened in the past is banks I've been able to get very good profits year in, year out, of course, at the expense of everybody else in the economy. In other countries, we've seen controls, but even where there are no controls, the proper regulation and enforcement of whatever rules people have, I've seen rates below 10% in most developed countries. If, for example, you talk about the LIBOR, the London interbank rate, for example, if you were to borrow foreign currency in this country, they sort of make reference to that LIBOR rate. The LIBOR rate is in the region of 5 to 6%. So as far as I'm concerned, the 12 or 13% that they're not being asked to charge, they will still make a profit. We talk about the spread because they take money from you and me when you deposit. They will give you at...
and just before you talk about the spread, I think it is also important to point out at this juncture that the law is two-pronged. It touches on the interest rates when you borrow and the interest rates that you as a depositor in a bank are supposed to get. It puts that at about 7.8%.
Yes. There is A and B. The A is talking about the maximum interest banks will charge on
loans.
On loans.
Yes.
And they also say the minimum they will pay on deposits, which is 70% of the base rate.
Yes.
So, which would be about 6% at the moment, if you take the base rate of 8.9. So we expect that spread between 6.3 and 12.9 is reasonable for banks to cover their costs and make a profit. But as it is, the law says 70% is the minimum you can pay on deposits, and the base plus 4 as the interest you charge on the loans.
To close our discussion, Mr. Onono, the fact that you have been in the business of assisting people who have borrowed from banks and have problems with interest rates, either recalculations, talking about the induplium rule, assessments of different variables, this new law might create such a large problem for a lot of people in terms of trying to get implementation. Do you think your organization, IRAC, will be able to step into that, basically that breach, and be able to point a way forward in terms of determining what rates are applicable under this law for borrowers going forward?
Yeah, we will be able to do that. We have the mechanisms of checking what has been done on a bank loan statement.
Yes.
But that will depend on individuals coming to us to make or to ask us to assess. And as I said, we have the ability, we have the resources. We'll be able to check thoroughly on whether the banks have actually implemented the law as stipulated.
Yes, and just before I let you go, the fact that this law does not seem to apply to fees and commissions charged on loans, the 1.5%, the 5% on top which borrowers get, or the immediate reduction on cash given to borrowers that goes to legal fees, those sorts of fees and commissions, will that remain the same? Has that been affected under this new law?
That, unfortunately, the law is silent on what will happen. So banks will, I think, still charge various commissions and charges. But previously, the Donde bill, for example, only talked about interest and didn't allow all these other charges. But this particular piece of legislation doesn't mention anything about commissions and charges.
Yes. I know you're not a lawyer, but would there be then room to start to amend this bill in the future in a way that will be more holistic and more sustainable going forward?
Come again?
I know the fact that you're not a lawyer, but there seems to be lacunas in this law that would then merit different amendments going forward to be able to take some sort of care of the gaps that I imagine.
I expect that before they do the assessment, they will check on minor errors, if there are any,
yes,
and make sure that it is clear when it is gazetted. But otherwise, there are areas I think that people could use to not implement it fully, as we have seen in the past. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much, sir, for taking the time to talk to us. Mr. Wilfred Onono, right there from the Interest Rates Advisory Center, telling us just what exactly Kenyans can expect from implementation of the new law that seeks to cap interest rates. The fact that that battle has been going on for the last 16 years, and finally those efforts coming to fruition here today.